Alrighty, so we got a few things here with Jay Gruden. I'm only doing the years where he had Kirk as his starting quarterback, which is actually only 3. And one thing I did notice pretty quickly was the rushing yards kind of just weren't there for the most part. They averaged 97.9, 106, and 90.5 per game with him in those seasons, which in 2016 it was much better because they averaged 4.5 yards per carry, but the other years they were 3.7 and 3.6 yards per carry. So, yeah. But in totality of things, I averaged all of them up and kind of gave you just the average season of what he was doing with Kirk Cousins. And I'm going to compare that to Minnesota's 2019 season. And I've also I've put where the average statistic would have ranked for the 2019 season if it were to be just a thing. So yeah, let's get into it. Total yards was 360.7 for Jay Gruden. For Minnesota this year was 353.5, which would have been 15th for Gruden, 16th for Minnesota, so obviously a difference of 1 yards per play. They're both at 5.8, so tied for 10th with each other there. 262.6 pass yards per game for Jay Gruden, which would have been 8th this season. Minnesota was down to 23rd at 220.2, so that's a difference of 15. Sacks allowed, 30 for Jay Gruden on average, which would have been 9th this year. Minnesota had 28, so that was 5th. So difference of 4 in favor of Minnesota. Quarterback rating, 97.8 for Gruden and 103.9 for Minnesota. That's a difference of 4 in favor of Minnesota again, 10-6. Touchdowns, 12 they ranked 12th with 27 for Jay Gruden, and Minnesota was 14th with 26. So that's a difference of 2 in favor of the Gruden thing. Interceptions, 12 picks for Gruden, which would have been 15th this season. Minnesota threw 8, which is 5th. That's a difference of 10. Percentage is largely the same for the most part. Jay Gruden's thing here, 67%, which would have been 6th in the league. Minnesota was at 68.5, which was 4th. So it's still a difference of 2 in favor of Minnesota, but it's only 1.5% better. Rush yards, this is where you see the big difference. 98.1 for Gruden, which was 23rd. Minnesota, 133.3, 6th. That's a difference of 17. Yards per carry, 3.9, which would have been 24th. Minnesota was at 4.5, which was 11th. Difference of 13. Rushing touchdowns, he averaged 12 per season, which would have been 20th. Minnesota had 19, which was 6th, so difference of 14 there. Points per game, 23.5, would have been 15th. Minnesota was at 25.4 this year, which was 8th. That's a difference of 7 in favor of Minnesota. Third down percentage, 40 for Gruden, 43 for Minnesota. 40 would have been 15%, not 15%, 15 ranked. And then Minnesota was 9th ranked in that, difference of 6 in favor of the Vikings. So Zimmer worked with Gruden, we know that, from 2011-2013. He also worked with Cousins for 3 years. And they run a very similar style of offense, Jay Gruden does, to the Gary Kubiak offense. So you also have Zimmer saying continuity is a big thing for Kirk Cousins this year. He's obviously familiar with Jay Gruden, runs a similar system. He could adapt well. So where's the holdup? And, well, after the 2017 season, Gruden wasn't really, beaming with confidence of Kirk Cousins, and they went 7-9 that year, and he was saying you can't call the you can't say the quarterback played outstanding because he went 7-9, but he was consistent and he showed flashes and things of that nature. So it's just a little, not that that's necessarily a shot, because it's probably a very fair criticism of him, but you don't usually see head coaches take the fair criticism. You usually see it all the way one way or all the way the other way with no in between. With this way, we had an in between where he's basically saying he did some good things, but not all were good. And going into a contract year, that was a little, you could look into that and that's a little interesting. The bigger one was in June 2018 to me, where Jay was on record for saying he'll get the most out of the wide receivers and the offensive line because they're going to want to play for him and they're going to feel confident that he's going to make something happen in a positive way, or at least give it everything he's got and take responsibility if something doesn't work out. And the problem with that is he said that about Alex Smith, who was obviously the guy replacing Kirk Cousins to begin with. Now, obviously, it's different. But, so, now we have to decipher a little bit. Is that last one, propaganda for, them saying, like, no, this is our new quarterback. Fan base, get hyped for him. Or is this a shot at Kirk? We can't really know that unless they talk to him, or, Kirk, you talk to Kirk at least and just say, do you have bad blood with this guy? Because there's a lot of things that actually make sense, even from a statistical standpoint. Obviously, they average the same yards per play at 5.8, at least this season did, and just in total with Kirk, Gruden did. They were only 7 yards off from each other in total yards. The big difference to me was they had to throw more because they couldn't run the ball very effectively, where Minnesota can, because guess what? You got a Dalvin Cook in this offense. They did not have a Dalvin Cook. They had Chris Thompson. Much different. And one reason why I think it probably didn't really work out there in Washington is because you did have a quarterback who, he isn't elite. I don't think I would call him elite, but he's certainly more than capable, I think. And when you go into the range of, oh wait, you're going to basically have no reliable running game, then you kind of have to play perfect as a starting quarterback in the NFL, which if you don't have an elite guy, you're probably not winning many games that way. And so, yeah, they ended up around 500, which isn't bad considering he didn't have a reliable running game. And if you can supply that piece, this makes a lot of sense. But if there's bad blood in between the two, you can't really make that higher. And it just kind of sucks that we have to worry about that, because otherwise this could be a pretty easy plug and play. If Zimmer likes the guy because you got the Zimmer connection, he runs basically the same offense as Kubiak does. He has familiarity with Kirk Cousins. You need an offensive coordinator. You're in a win-now mode. This guy just came off of being a head coach, so obviously he's not getting a head coaching position right now because all the spots are filled. And so if that isn't, the shade and is more on the propaganda side, this could work. But if there actually is bad blood, you're going to need to, obviously, like I said, you're going to need to figure that out before you hire the guy, and probably before you even bring him into the building. So I would like to know your comments down below. Like and subscribing always helps. And until next time, I bid y'all adieu.